You've seen the best.
You've seen the worst.
Now here's the rest of both worlds.
I'm GayFesh. Sometimes you have to bow to the absurd.
And I'm Ari, and now quote me a little of that poetry.
And today we will be discussing the Star Trek The Next Generation episodes Up the Long Ladder and Manhunt. But first, there's some big Star Trek news. They just announced for Season 3 of Star Trek Picard that the entire cast of The Next Generation is coming back for the show's grand farewell. Well, everyone except Will Wheaton and Diana Muldaur, but, you know.
We don't need Diana.
Listen, Will Wheaton is busy doing the Ready Room after show specials where he, you know, has the big geeky smile on his face as he interviews all of his best friends.
That sounds amazing, actually.
I'm looking forward to it. That we don't know much else other than that they had like one shot, like one bit of footage where there was Picard and Riker holding phasers at something, but that's all we saw. But I'm actually interested to see what they do with Worf, because they redesigned the Klingons in Star Trek Discovery.
Oh yeah, they did. You told me that, so I wonder what he's going to look like.
I think he's probably still just going to look like himself. They might, use a higher quality mold for it, just because, it's being filmed for 4K TV and all that. So
right, yeah.
You want to make sure it doesn't look up close like it is, because, you can tell in this show with the restoration. I'm like, oh yeah, you can see exactly where like the latex of the headpiece is like glued in and blended over.
Yeah, you can.
You don't want to do that for the new one. You want to have something looking a little better. Since we're going to be getting, I guess, a finale to TNG in Star Trek Picard, I figured we might as well mention that after we get through TNG, probably we're going to do the movies. And then before we move on to another series, we're going to go ahead and do Picard, because it's just
I think that's
seasons.
a good plan. Since now it seems to be the like capstone or whatever to TNG, it feels like we really should just go straight from here to there. And then we can decide where we go from there, which will probably be Deep Space Nine.
That would be my preference.
I think that's what we've talked about.
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited to see where the Picard thing goes, because I'm fully invested now that we've almost 2 seasons through, and I think it'll be really cool.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I'm sure some people will be like, no, don't do Picard, because it's kind of, a lot of people don't like that show. And I think the first season of the show is actually my least favorite season of Star Trek. But, I think this new season's getting better, and we'll see where it goes.
Good.
It's okay if it's bad, too, because we can have fun mocking bad stuff as well.
And, it's okay. It's so easy for me to like bad media with characters I care about, which is why I can like Star Wars movies that people don't like and stuff, is because I'm like, yes, but this is more lore and more stories and more backstory, and look at those ships we've never seen before, and stuff like that. I get really excited about that kind of stuff, so I feel like there's some value to Picard anyway.
Yeah, I would rather have bad Star Trek than no Star Trek.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we are kind of in this huge Star Trek renaissance. Like, I was having to watch a preview for Strange New Worlds while I was waiting for my episode that I pay for.
Yeah.
I was kind of irritated about that. But I was watching it and I was like, actually, this looks really good too. Like, I really want to watch that one too. Yeah.
Yeah, that one's going to be amazing. And we're just a couple weeks away from it. So I'm excited. As
far as the podcast goes, I don't think we're doing anything with that, though, because we'd have to put a big pause on TNG. And I don't think we want to do that, right?
No, we'll just I've got my YouTube channel where I'll be reviewing all those episodes as they come out. So.
Yeah. OK.
Pop over there if you want to hear about it.
That sounds great. But today we're going to talk about Up the Long Ladder, which is the 18th episode of the second season. It aired on the 22nd of May, 1989. It was written by Melinda M. Snodgrass and directed by Winrich Colby.
Boy, I gotta say, it was a really ballsy move doing such an offensive Irish stereotype when you have Colm Meaney on set.
That was my first thought. I was like, they saw this episode and they were like, that guy can be in Far and Away. Because I was like, why is Far and Away happening on the Enterprise? What is going on here?
Actually, it's my understanding that Colm Meaney, who plays O'Brien, behind the scenes was just like, what is this? This is so offensive.
It seems so offensive. Yeah. But then he was in Far and Away. So I don't know that he really 2 years later. So I don't know that he really has a lot of room to talk there. But I mean, because he played some offensive Irish stereotypes in that movie, I thought. But I mean, I don't know. I just, it was an episode of Star Trek.
So, the episode starts, they get an SOS but it's like an old signal. It's from like the 22nd century Earth. And it's just like, they don't have any real records of like a ship from that era having gotten out this far. So they're like, oh, well, let's investigate and take a look. And meanwhile, while they're doing that, Worf gets like COVID 1701.
Yeah. He has like indigestion and falls on the. He's like sitting there going, and I'm like, what's going on? And there's this weird music, and everybody's ignoring it, and then Worf just is like on the ground. They come back. It was weird,
and it's funny too because like that bit gets resolved like right at the beginning of the episode, and then like there's no real reference to it later in the show. It just felt like. Because like he and Pulaski have just a little tiny arc where he deals with that sickness, but then it just doesn't get addressed again. But what it did do was it did establish a little bit of a rapport between those two, because when Pulaski examines him, finds out that he has a Klingon childhood illness, and he's just like, well, that's humiliating. Don't tell anyone about that. And Pulaski's just like, oh, she like lies to the captain and says, no, Worf was trying to fast, but he forgot he has to lower his energy expenditure with his reduced caloric intake. So he
should be more offended by her trying to give that stupid explanation that he'd be dumb enough to do that than he has childhood measles. I was like, I was so offended for him that was her.
Well, he wasn't. He actually he was quite pleased, and as a token of gratitude for Pulaski lying to save his feelings, he performs the Klingon tea ceremony for her, which is apparently, because it's Klingon, the tea is like poisonous.
Right, because everything has to be difficult. Yeah.
Well, it's like when, for on your birthday, you get stuck by as many pain sticks as years you are old or something like that.
And then you drink as many cups of tea as you are old. And then you hope you make it through the night, and then you're a man. Not a man. Not a man.
Not a man. That's right. He does insist that he's not a man in the next episode. But anyway, Pulaski makes sure to like give herself a hypo spray that she calls an antidote, so that she's also able to drink the poisonous tea, because a Klingon can withstand it, but it'll kill a human.
Right.
But I kind of feel like had she stayed on, like that was like the beginnings of like a potential romance between the two of them, because
I'm not entirely sure that wasn't a cut to black and they did it afterwards, because the way she said, now read me some of that poetry or recite some of that poetry or whatever. I was like, okay. And then they cut to black. I was like, all right.
Yeah. Because like, when you see it, it's like before that point, you can't really see a Pulaski Worf thing, but here you're like, oh, you know what? No, I see it. They could get down. She, and you know what? Klingon sex is very kinky and very violent, and so it's good to have a doctor on hand.
It really is. My favorite line, though, during that bit when he's sick before they have the tea ceremony is he's like, there's no need to insult me because she said that he fainted. And I was like, have you met Dr. Pulaski?
She insults everyone.
She insults everybody, buddy. You're just part of the crew. So, yeah, that was the whole B plot. It happened in the first 5 minutes, right? I don't remember anything else happening with the B plot.
Yeah, no, I wonder if there had been a scene later that was just cut for time or something, where because they mentioned the Klingon love poetry, but we never see Worf recite any of that. So maybe that was in a cut scene.
Maybe, or maybe they just want to keep it a secret so we don't have to judge the poetry because it's supposed to be so good.
Well, he probably would have recited it in Klingon, so you wouldn't need to know what it actually
I wouldn't
means.
need to know. Or I wouldn't get to know. And he's like, I made you this tea to thank you for keeping my secrets. And I was like, it's called HIPAA, Worf. I was like, she has to follow HIPAA.
Well, HIPAA doesn't exist in Starfleet. The ship's captain is usually made aware of issues with crew
Oh, that's true. I think in the Army, that's true, too. I don't think HIPAA exists in the Army because, like, your commanding officer gets to know what's wrong with you or whatever.
Yeah, because it's a readiness issue. The doctor will usually just, there's no real... there's sometimes doctor-patient confidentiality when they need to invoke it, but usually it's just the captain knows what's up.
Right, yeah. So then they send Riker down to the planet. I guess they got the distress signal and they send Riker down. And I guess we didn't have the budget for an away team.
No, he just off screen goes down and then he beams up because there's like something wrong with their planet. They have to abandon it. So they're like, all right, well, let's beam up the colony. And the colony is just a bunch of like stereotypical Irish farmers.
Yeah.
And like complete with like fiddle music playing and everything, and there's like
I know who was playing that music.
And pigs. Obviously, it was the background. It wasn't actual music going on. Like
I was trying to figure that out. I was like, is the show just playing us some folksy Titanic music here, or is that actually playing on the Enterprise?
I think if it was actually playing, you would have seen them with the instruments playing it because they're true, yeah. Because they're kind of like a. I think that they mentioned it was like some new philosophy that emerged after World War III where people like tried to return to it's kind of like an Amish type
Neo-transcendentalism is what they called it.
That's what they called it, right. Where you just try to return to living in harmony with nature and all that stuff. So,
right, like Ralph Waldo Emerson was a transcendentalist. Walden, Thoreau, the name of the pond is Walden, was a transcendentalist. But like that was all just a facade though, because like we all found out later on that Walden's parents owned the property he lived on and stuff. I just have to bring that up because it's one of my favorite stories.
Pretty much anytime somebody goes off and lives on a commune and stuff like that, there's usually somebody's rich.
Do it. Yeah, exactly. But yes, neo-transcendentalism. And so they went off to go be Amish.
Be Irish Amish.
Irish Amish, yeah. And then while they were doing that, their friends split off to another planet and became 5 people.
Right, because their ship crashed on their planet and only 5 of them survived, which wasn't enough for them to, breed. So they decided to go with cloning instead. But before they even get to there, they're still dealing with all of the Irish stereotypes on the ship. And of course, Riker sees a fiery Irish woman who's screaming at everyone else, but as soon as she sees him, she's lifting up her skirt so he can see her ankles
and then her stomach, and then she just runs around the whole rest of the episode in a crop top. I was like, that's an interesting and bold choice.
It was weird too because like when she's like when she asks Riker if there's any place on the ship for her to wash her feet, he's like, well, I'll show you all the amenities. And then like the next time we see him, he takes her to his quarters, but she's in a different outfit.
Oh, was the outfit different? I didn't know.
Yeah, because she was in that red dress to start, and then she was in the green thing with the crop top. And I'm just like, when did they change? Because it wasn't like they had sex and then went to his quarters for a costume change. She changed her costume between then, so like and it because especially because she comes on to him in his quarters and it's clear that they haven't had sex yet, so I don't know. I did that costume change just seemed like, was it a production error?
I don't know, because the whole scene was weird, because I was like, there's probably a million places on the ship for you to wash your feet off that are not Riker's personal bedroom. But that's where she ended up because that's where Riker wanted her to be. So maybe there was time that passed, but it didn't feel like there was time because he led her away from the holding area they were holding them in. How many large holding areas do they have for people on their ship?
Oh, well, they called that cargo bay 7, so there's at least 7 of them.
At least 7, yeah. So before we move forward with the plot, I want to stop here and I want to ask a question about how alcohol works when it comes out of the replicator. Right. Because it gives you all the happy effects, but there's no downside, right?
So you might have mentioned when the leader of the colony asks Worf for alcohol, and Worf's like, oh, you can use the replicators. He's like, oh, it's not that synthahol bilge that O'Brien tried to give us. He's like, and Worf's like, no. If you want, it could be real alcohol. So,
oh, okay. I kind of sort of misunderstood then that so they were actually drinking real alcohol.
Yes, synthahol it's like alcohol, but all of the deleterious effects can be willed away. at a moment. But no, they were drinking actual alcohol. But, of course, he orders a whiskey, and I guess the ship's whiskey is kind of whatever the whiskey pattern on the ship is kind of tame, and so then Worf orders like a Klingon beverage that's got the dry ice effect, so that oh wow, this must be really something. And of course the guy turns into a cartoon character.
He turns into a Disney cartoon character. I know, it was so annoying. I was like, it was like some old cartoon that you'd see like Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Like I was like, this is so weird. But yeah, okay, so I misunderstood the Worf part of it then, because when he said that, I thought he meant you just need to try a different type of synthahol or whatever, and so I was confused as to why they were so upset about that. But why does alcohol that still has all the negative effects, like, that could kill you still exist at that time?
Well, I mean, the replicator can make anything, right? So, like... The only reason it wouldn't make it is if they like actually actively banned it. And I can understand maybe they put a restriction on it. Obviously, you can't order it if you're under 21. But
right.
Yeah, I think it's just, well, alcohol does exist, but you could have synthahol because it doesn't have any of the deleterious effects. So, your liver's okay. Right.
Yeah. It seemed weird to be like, well, yeah, of course you can have real alcohol. I don't know. It was weird. And so I guess but now I understand a little bit better that the replicator still can make other alcohol. So then
there's reasons to replicate alcohol other than for drinking it anyway. It's
like cooking,
the cleaning solvent. There's all sorts of reasons. Yeah.
So then they find out there's this other planet where the other more technologically advanced part of this expedition had gone, right?
Yeah.
Off to another planet, and then they get there and they don't realize it's clones, and so Dr. Pulaski has to fill them in.
Yeah,
I mean, it seemed pretty obvious by the third or fourth one it was clones to me, but they're all like quadruplets.
Yeah, well, did you notice? Because they had the one shot where they cast triplet actors for the scene, and then like another one walks behind them, but it's in a different shot. So I assume they had triplets, and then they just had one of them go and double. But it would make sense for if you're going to have a planet of clones. Okay, we're putting out a casting call for twins and triplets.
Right, because then you could just have them in different shots and stuff. Yeah.
I think except the main guy, like the prime minister, we saw a couple others of him, but only one at a time.
That's true. So he must not have been a twin. So they've been cloning, and what did Pulaski call it? She called it fatigue? Is that what she called it?
I don't remember the exact term, but basically it's clones of clones of clones. It's like they fade after time. And that's actually kind of telomere shortening is a real thing that happens with clones. And I think that with like early clones of animals, they would live like maybe half the time of a regular animal.
Yeah.
And it's something we've, learned to repair. There are ways to increase telomere length because telomeres are basically a junk code at the end of DNA that is there as a buffer so that in copying errors, if you lose bits at the end, it's just the junk code, and the actual important code is still remains intact.
Interesting. Okay.
But it looks like they're running into the limits of that because they've been cloning the same 5 people for hundreds of years.
And in that, they decided that they no longer needed to have sex.
Well, I mean, if they had decided to have sex, it would have only given them a few more people before, like, they ran into inbreeding issues. So that wasn't an option for them. But they can have
sex without having babies.
Oh, that's my point.
True. like, why did they like ban sex? Like, that was the weirdest thing I had heard. I was like, what do you mean you turned off sex? You guys, you're still making tons and tons of clones. You can still have sex. Like, I don't understand, because that's the part of the whole problem is then because immediately I was like, you just got to hook these 2 people back together,
which is the obvious solution at the end of the episode.
Yes.
But they want to maintain their cloning. They're like, look, we haven't had sex in hundreds of years. It's kind of disgusting to us now. So we would just like to have samples of crew DNA so that we can replenish our stock. And then, well, first off, Riker's like, you can't have my DNA.
I know. So one time I was watching a cooking show. I don't remember what cooking show, but it was like a competition type thing. And this kid didn't get first place. And he storms out of the back room when it's not his turn and says, my mommy raised a champion. And we say that a lot in my house. And it reminded me of that because I was like, what the hell, Riker? Like, I did not understand Riker's sentiment. Did you understand? Would you give your DNA to the alien men?
I think, well, there's the idea of, having a clone of yourself can be a little unsettling. I mean, I feel like you should be able to consent to somebody.
Oh, yes, I'm not
you.
saying that it was good for them to take it against their will. I just did not relate to Riker's adamant, no, I will not give you my DNA.
And it also seems weird, too, because, like, I'm sure there would have been crew members who would have been like, yeah, you can take my DNA. That's fine. I don't care. I'm not coming back to this planet. If there's copies of me roaming around, I'm never going to see them.
Yeah, my notes say, this is stupid. Clone me. They can have my DNA.
But Pulaski does point out that it doesn't matter if they get an infusion of new clones because they're still going to run into the same issue in a couple hundred years.
If they don't start having babies like normal people. Yeah.
If they don't. Yeah. So they decide, okay, well, we've got a bunch of refugees who can't live on their planet anymore. You've got a whole bunch of infrastructure and technology. Have some breeding stock. And at first they're just like, oh, we don't want to deal with this, Irish riffraff. They're, you expect us to mate with our lessers. And it was a, like a kind of a classism, like anti-immigration kind of a thing. But then they resolve it with like a handshake or whatnot. They're like, we don't have time to deal with the class shit. But but before they get to that solution though, they do like stun Pulaski and Riker and steal some epithelial cells without their consent
from the inside of their stomach. That apparently the tricorder thingy can see that like individual cells are gone out of their stomach.
Well, I mean, if it was from a specific area, they probably took, a substantial amount so that they could, make lots of clones. So it's probably enough that it's like, oh, yep, there's and she could probably see just the giant needle hole went through them.
Yeah, the giant needle hole is true.
Those were not thin needles.
And then they somehow just automatically got into the super secret clone room and killed their own clones, which is, something I always thought would be fun.
That was a wonderful, just like, Riker does an abortion.
I know. Like, he just walks in there and is like, nips.
And they even treat it like, you murdered them. It's like, no, I didn't murder anything. You had no rights to use my cells, and I don't consent to this. So, it was a good way to do. And like, I think like pro-life groups picked up on that and were pretty upset about it. And they're just like, well, screw you.
It's just yes, screw you. Because we even say in the next episode that, we should have a choice to do what we want to with our body or whatever. I think it's the next episode they said that. And then Deanna's like, oh, and I agree or whatever. It was a weird moment. So it seems like maybe they were having those discussions in the writer's room, because it feels like there was two different references to my body, my choice, in these two episodes. And I thought that was interesting. So I really want someone to take Brenna aside, though, and tell her to tone it down, like, a lot, and maybe explain that money isn't real.
She's a stereotype. You can't. Like, they're all stereotypes.
She's a gold digger, but the money isn't real anymore. Like, somebody, I don't know. Someone might want to just explain that to her.
Well, money doesn't exist in the Federation, but keep in mind that this colony was formed before the Federation even founded. Like, they didn't even come from like a United Earth government. They were from the European hegemony, I think is what they called it. So,
and that's where I learned how to pronounce that word, by the way. I had only read it before. I thought it was hegemony. I'm not even going to lie. I have read Shadow of the Hegemon, and I did not know. I don't know. I heard Picard say it and I said, what word did he just say? And I looked down at the subtitles and I was like, oh, that's how you say that word.
But yeah, I mean, obviously the Irish colony had money because they're talking about it. So I assume that the other colony also has money. When they decide, okay, we're just going to have them merge, they say, okay, now in order for there to be enough genetic material, y'all are going to have to throw monogamy out the window. Everyone gets to have 3 different like every woman should have 3 different kids by 3 different fathers, And it doesn't really seem like it takes much convincing for the men to agree to that. and Brandon is just like, oh, of course, all of you men folk are happy to make that decision for us. And Picard's like, well, if you don't want to, you could just come along with the ship. And then she's like, well, I don't know. That guy's kind of cute and he rich, though.
I know. She immediately is just off to go find another rich guy to hook up with. I know. I don't know. I didn't hate this episode, but I didn't feel like this episode had a lot of value. Like,
it's a really goofy one.
It's kind of like the one where they find the three Americans, Sunny and the other people. Like, it was kind of like, okay, this is an interesting concept, but I wanted it to be more full. I don't know how to explain it better than that. I just felt like, because like you said, the B plot ended in the first 7 minutes of the episode. So the whole episode was these two planets and whether or not we can come up with some sort of solution. And then the solution ends up being, we'll just leave them here together to figure it out for themselves. But that's fine. I mean, it seems like a good solution because the other colony has like the resources to help, and they can't stay on the solar flare planet. So I mean, it all kind of it almost fit together too nicely at the end.
I don't know that it fit together too nicely. I mean, it's an issue that we're seeing now with countries that have limited immigration policies, like Japan. They are having the average age of the Japanese person just keeps going up. There's just so many elderly people, and because they have such strict immigration, there's not enough young people to replace them. And they're having a real crisis with that.
That's interesting.
And if they would take immigrants and stop being racist about it, they would solve that problem. And that's basically what this situation is, just in sci-fi terms with clones.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Okay, so this next episode we're going to talk about is called Manhunt. I didn't even pay attention to the title. It's the 19th episode of the second season. It aired on the 19th of June, 1989. It was written by Terry Devereaux and directed by Rob Bowman.
So, Lwaxana Troy's back.
Yes, I was very excited about this. I like to call her Mommy. I don't know why. It's just what I started calling her after the last episode.
And actually, it really surprised me when you texted me earlier because I don't know how you didn't pick up on this, but you didn't know that was Majel Barrett before.
No, I didn't. Like, I know that Majel Barrett is the computer, and I know that Majel Barrett is Nurse Chapel, but I did not somehow connect the dot between Majel Barrett being Lwaxana and being Nurse Chapel. I did not realize they were the same person. So she literally talks to herself in this episode.
I know. That's a cute moment where she just has a conversation with the ship's... And sure, they deliberately wrote this like, oh, let's have Lwaxana talk to herself.
Yeah, they had to have. Yeah.
This episode also had a very interesting cameo. I don't know if you were paying attention to the intro credits where they said there was a special guest appearance.
No, I was too busy freaking out that she was Majel Barrett, I think. I usually do pay attention. That's how I figured out she was Majel Barrett.
So the fish people on the ship, one of them was actually stunt casting. He was played by Mick Fleetwood.
I did see that.
Mick Fleetwood's like, yeah, I'd like to go on and play an alien. He gets like one line of dialogue. He just stands there looking like a weird fish thing. You cannot tell that it's him at all unless you look closely and you're like, yeah, those look like his lips. But, that's assuming you know what he looks like.
Right. I did see that in there and I was like, okay, I saw that name, but then I saw Majel Barrett and got completely distracted. Right. And so I'm not wrong to believe that you mean Mick Fleetwood from Fleetwood Mac, right?
Yes, very Fleetwood. Yes.
Interesting. He was just playing Seattle the other day. Did you know that?
I did not know that. Huh.
Or maybe it's coming up. It's like in the next couple of days or something. Anyway, I saw that name and then I saw Majel Barrett and I was just like, wait, I missed something major. So he was one of the fish people they were so racist about.
Well, Lwaxana was so racist about, and Wesley was a little racist about.
He knows better. Like, we know from last season when he was like, oh, I know everything about this race. I need to be a dick to this guy. That's how they talk to each other. Mm-hmm. Like, they have written Wesley so weird this season. Like, they completely have forgotten his chosen one trope type thing. And they're just like, here's a dumb kid to ask dumb kid questions. And it's kind of bothering me. Do you know what I mean? Maybe it'll get better when his mom's back. Maybe he's just going through a phase.
Mom, I need you to come back to the Enterprise. I'm getting racist.
I know. Okay, so after I had my Meg Fleetwood and Majel Barrett, those are two. And
Yep.
So then it turns out that so the first thing is we've got some frozen fish guys. And they have to bring them on board, and Pulaski is going to take care of them and defrost them right before it's time to...
Yeah, they're in hibernation because that's how they travel through space, because space travel for them is very stressful.
And then there's a shuttle approaching. And the shuttle is approaching, and they cut to Deanna, and I'm like, Deanna, why would they cut to Deanna? And you see her face, and she quickly sits up out of the chair, and I went, it's her mom, it's her mom, it's her mom, it's her mom. And I was right. I was so excited, and I had not read the description, so I was very excited. And then my favorite moment of the entire episode was Loxana trying to get Picard to carry her suitcase again, because that was one of my favorite lines from last episode. And then Riker's
like, no, let Mr. Holmes do it. And then Riker's like, no, I can do it. And he tries it. And it's very clearly, it must weigh like 150 pounds.
She was trying to embarrass Picard, I think. Mm-hmm. Oh, Loxana.
And Riker's like, no, it's fine. I can pick... And like he tries to pick it up and it doesn't even budge, and he's like, yeah, I can carry it. And then he's just like leaning over, like basically like the center of gravity from picking that thing up just goes so much that he's just like, his head is just like 3 feet hanging over his feet.
It's like watching Mando fight with the Darksaber. I know. So the whole plot is that Loxana is going through the change, as we would call it as humans, but the phase, and so she's okay, so I said the other moment was my favorite moment, but there's the moment where Deanna's sitting next to Riker, and she says that the sex drive can quadruple, and she's like, or more, and he's like, or more.
You didn't warn me about that. She's like, I didn't want to scare you.
It was so good. So the whole thing is that she just wants to, like, I don't know why this woman needs to marry somebody to hook up with them. She strikes me as the kind of woman that just screws whoever she wants.
It's a propriety thing. I mean, she's, a Federation official. She's the ambassador for Beta Z. I think there's probably a status issue where she can't just sleep with just any random person. I imagine if she had just been like a commoner, it wouldn't have been an issue. But because of her status, it would be embarrassing for her to just sleep around, I think. Which is dumb. Okay. For a species that's telepathic, they should have gotten rid of all those inhibitions long ago. Because of this, she's decided, well, I'm just going to go marry someone on the ship. And of course, she has her sights set on Picard because he's the captain. And so Picard decides, well, I better make myself unavailable. And so he goes and boots up Dixon Hill on the holodeck.
Which has all the locks, we all know, because no one ever interrupts a holodeck experience.
Well, she doesn't. Loxana is technologically illiterate. Like, she actually just, like, has to talk to the computer to even find out that she can find where other people are. She doesn't really know how the transporter works. Like, she freaks out when she's beamed aboard and facing the other way and thinking that her legs aren't there. And, she's a boomer.
She is a boomer.
But because Picard's not available, she's like, well, why don't I just start going through the rest of the crew? And, like, grossly, like, for half a second considers Wesley. And I'm like, stay the hell away from the literal child. And as soon as she's like, well, I'm not, no, I can't wait for you to grow up. And then she, like, immediately looks over at Worf. And you know what? She should have stuck with Worf, because Worf would have been like, yes, let's try to break this woman.
I thought in the end it was going to end up being Data, actually, was going to be the one to be able to satisfy her. I mean, he's fully functional, right? And she won't annoy the shit out of him, and he's not a person. So, well,
the problem is he annoys the shit out of her. Because remember, when she tricked Picard into having a romantic dinner with her, he called in Data to, like,
cockblock him.
To cockblock, to just give a whole bunch of just, like, irrelevant, small talk conversations, so that Picard could get
very encouraging. Oh man, Data, that's so interesting. Keep going. Yeah. But he had seen Data cockblock so much, he was like, I have the perfect solution for this.
That's right.
Get in here, Data. I think another one of my favorite moments, apparently I just really love these episodes with the mom, but another one of my favorite moments is that Luxana comes onto the bridge and Deanna's like, you can't just stroll on here. And I'm like, everybody just strolls onto the bridge. What are you talking about?
Not only does everyone stroll on the bridge, she's literally a Federation ambassador. Like, I'm pretty sure she outranks Picard.
Oh, so, really? I didn't know that.
So
that's why they're so weird about the ambassador stuff.
Yeah. Now, I mean, some diplomats, I mean, I think in general it's probably bad decorum for her to just stroll on the bridge without, checking with the captain and stuff, but she does kind of outrank him, so she gets to do what she wants.
She does, yeah, that makes sense. So then in the end, she ends up crashing the holodeck, surprise, surprise, which was
after deciding that she's going to marry Riker.
I almost left that part out. We can't forget that part.
And Deanna's like, you can't pick him. And she's like, why not? You haven't picked him.
She's basically like, yeah, I'm just going to marry your boy. Get over it.
Yeah. Well, and also, Luxana has some, really regressive views on men. It's almost like...
It's like they're trying to write her as a male sexist. That's how I took it.
Yeah, well, because it felt like this feels a lot like misogyny. Or I guess the word is misandry, even though that's kind of a different thing. Because it doesn't have the same, structural systems in place. But even so, it was just... She's like, you really are just kind of objectifying men in a kind of gross way.
And at one point I thought she was going to hook up with Mr. Hom because of that as well, because she basically saw all the men equally. And since he was there and available, I was like, maybe she'll just marry him.
Oh, Mr. Hom, that reminds me. When Picard comes to dinner at first, he brings a carafe of some alcoholic drink and that he brought as a party favor, but he hands it to Hom, and Hom just immediately downs the entire thing in a single gulp. And Picard's just like, up.
I know, and he's like, I don't know if I'm supposed to say anything here. And of course, we couldn't go with the dinner without the gong. I was so glad we made sure the gong was there. Bong. So she's decided she's going to marry Riker, and then she goes to get dressed in her fancy 80s dress. And then she asks the computer where the captain is or where Riker is. I can't remember which one she's looking for at that point. But she asks the computer and she talks to herself, and the computer just shows her the way. And she just walks into Dixon Hill and doesn't even realize that it's a holodeck. Yeah. And that was, now when you were explaining they foreshadowed that she didn't know technology because she didn't know the turbo lift and all that. I was like, that made more sense when you were just explaining it. At first I was like, how come she's never seen a holodeck before? So she's attracted to the bartender guy, Rex, because she can't read his thoughts, which is exactly why Sookie Stackhouse is attracted to the vampire in the vampire books.
Right.
But so I was like, oh, she's Sookie Stackhousing him. She can't read his thoughts. And I thought, what's wrong with why? I guess she can't marry a hologram, but why can't she do the hologram? I was like, why do they need why was she so offended? Can they have sex with the holograms?
Yes, you can have sex with holograms. Deep Space Nine makes that a little more explicit because Quark's bar has some holosuites, which are usually just all sex programs.
All right.
So yeah, you could totally doink in the holodeck, and that's generally considered. That's probably most of what happens in the holodeck, just off hours. There's I don't remember. I think it's in a couple seasons here where Riker is there's a passenger who is trying to come onto him, but he can't sleep with her, and he just walks off and he just goes, computer, if anyone needs me, I'll be in holodeck 4.
Yeah, so I was like, so why can't, because if the whole point is that she's got all this pent up sexual frustration, work it out, honey. There's ways, there's data, there's the holodeck, there's all these ways that you could just work that sexual frustration out.
I don't understand why she doesn't have her own ship, right? She's rich. She's a diplomat. It makes sense that she would have her own ship, and then she could have a holodeck on that ship, and then she could go and work it out without having to sexually harass an entire Starfleet crew.
Right. I mean, because that's what it was, right?
Oh, it was absolutely sexual harassment, but it was the late 80s, and it was a woman doing it, so it's played for laughs.
Right.
And most of what she's doing, it's not like she's actually assaulting people. It's just she's being very creepy about it.
So creepy.
But, it's funny because, it's Majel Barrett.
She's good. She's good at the comedy.
And you know, she's harmless. She's annoying, but she's not, you know, she wouldn't actually rape somebody like that,
right?
Because she could tell if you would want it or not. And you know, obviously her psychic abilities are kind of on the fritz because of, you know, the phase. So she's usually very accurate at reading people's minds, and she does use that to correct effect in this episode in the end, but for the most part she's just making it up. I think she's projecting her own sexual feelings onto other people, and that's why she's reading it.
Yeah, or she's lying. I couldn't tell which one. I couldn't tell if she was just like, are you, you know, like she's implying, oh, you're so into me, ha ha ha, but that's just her joke or whatever, and nobody but her and the other person will know if it was a joke. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I thought it was interesting. I thought the episode was interesting. I do want to take a moment to talk about Worf and the Fishmen.
Yes.
Why did he like them so much? Like, what was it about him?
Well, Worf has always been portrayed as like, well, do you remember when Riker made the really gross eggs that nobody liked, but Worf thought they were delicious? It's kind of like that thing. Worf is an alien, so his standards of what tastes good and what looks good, like, you know, his everyone, when they see what Klingon sex is, they're like, oh my God, that's insane. But of course, he's Klingon, so it's totally normal to him.
It's normal, yeah. I just thought it was so interesting because they kept coming back to it, having him, but it was that racism, right? They were trying to show like it's different because Worf is from a different race. So
well, and also Worf calls out Wesley's racism. He's just like, did you think that way of me or whatever? Yeah, and then Wesley gave the worst answer possible. He was like, you know, I did it first, but then I met some other Klingons, and now I think you're pretty handsome for a Klingon. That didn't come out right.
That did not come out right. Yeah, I know. I just thought it was a really interesting writing for Worf. These two episodes both had interesting writing for Worf because it had the building the relationship with Pulaski, and then this fish, you know, I would call it like a C plot with him being attracted to the fish people. Like, they're very handsome race or whatever.
I don't think it was that he's attracted. I think he's admiring them.
And my admiration, that is far more of an accurate word. Yeah. What was going on with Dixon Hill? Was Picard just so frazzled by Loxana? How come he, like, I was like, okay, he goes into Dixon Hill and he's Dixon Hilling it up, and then he's like, oh, this is too violent. Yeah, you're in a Dixon Hill novel, friend. Like, what do you want here?
I think he probably, like, ideally he should have just been like, you know, look, I want to hang out here and get the ambiance. And he does say eventually, less substance, more ambiance, because he's like, look, I just want to like hang out without having any like story beats happening. I just kind of want to chill.
So I just thought it was a weird choice because he knows what Dixon Hill is.
It was funny to see just like a montage of different people bursting into his office trying to kill him. And actually,
it was good.
One of the guys who came in, the guy with the scar on his face and the big bug eyes, that guy, that actor plays Gowron, who is like a long-running recurring Klingon character that we should be meeting here soon.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And like I didn't know that beforehand, but when I saw him and I saw his big bug eyes, I was just like, oh, that's Gowron for sure. It's hard to like his face isn't like memorable enough on its own for me to tell with the Klingon makeup off, but the eyes were a dead giveaway.
Interesting. Yeah, I love how they reuse the characters, or the actors, not the characters, but the actors. I love how they'll continually come back. There's some people who play like 5 different people, right? Like, I'll look it up in the memory alpha after watching and I'll be like, oh, this person's in another episode, but is a totally different character.
I think Jeffrey Combs has played like 8 or 9 different characters. Vaughn Armstrong has played like 13. I know Enterprise actually had several cast members from like previous shows playing different characters, like Rene Auberjonois, who plays Odo on Deep Space Nine. He had a character on Enterprise. I think the guy who played Neelix played a Ferengi in an episode of Enterprise, and then who else? Oh, Brent Spiner came back as playing an ancestor of the guy who built Data.
Oh,
so you know, you get a lot of that. Yeah, Asung. So you get a lot of that.
Well, I always liked that in the Buffyverse too. Like when you like you'd be watching something like Supernatural, and I think in the time of Supernatural's existence of it's like 14 seasons.
15,
I think is it 15?
Yeah, I think it's 15.
I still haven't watched the last couple of seasons, but you get every single cast member of Buffy at some point has a guest star, except for Willow and except for Buffy, like the two biggest people. Right. Everybody at some point, because you kind of just start to expect it, right? Like, oh, we're gonna see these guys, but it's that special kind of that guy that we have in nerdy shows that they all kind of circle around in, because there's that guy who's on like, I think in like my example's Law and Order and shows like that, but there's a special circle of them. Mark Sheppard, yeah, but he even circles into the nerdy stuff, you know. But there's that certain circle of, oh, we only know him because we're into nerdy shows. You know, and it's like, oh yeah, he's like, I remember, my people always would say, who's Mark Sheppard? And I'd always say the lawyer from Battlestar Galactica. And that was that was the very first role where I remembered him as a human being, was that one. And then I always referenced him as that guy.
For me, I always go to Badger on Firefly. That's where I think of him first.
Right. And then I saw that after. So I didn't see Firefly for a long time, but that's that kind of thing, right? So I love those nerdy in-circle things, and Star Trek has a lot of it. And it makes you feel that cozy, warm feeling of being a nerd and recognizing the other nerdy characters or actors that play in a lot of nerdy shows. That's why people go to conventions and stuff, right?
And then sometimes you have rock stars play aliens.
Right. Suddenly Mick Fleetwood is a fish guy. You know?
Iggy Pop is in an episode of Deep Space Nine. He plays an alien. Actually, he's a pretty memorable character. Yeah, that's a fun one.
Interesting.
Yeah, you get people. I mean, there have been all sorts of special walk-on roles, like Mae Jemison, the first African-American woman in space. She gets a cameo. I think the president of Jordan had like a walk-on role on Voyager at one point.
Interesting.
He's a huge Trekkie. I think he actually built his own like Trek theme park in Jordan.
Wow.
So yeah, like you get a lot of you get a lot of the recurring actors who are like, yep, that's that dude who's always in sci-fi things. And then you also get the, hey, I bought overpriced scalp tickets to see that dude once.
Speaking of conventions, don't we have one coming here to where we live in Seattle?
So Star Trek Mission Chicago just ended, which was the first official Star Trek convention held since the pandemic started. And they announced that next year, I think May of next year, the next one is going to be Mission Seattle. Yeah, I'm looking forward. We definitely got to go to that.
We're definitely got to go. I think we should cosplay as something and not Armis. I know I keep joking that I want to cosplay as Armis.
I have a couple costume choices. I've actually got Picard's suede jacket that he wears in season 5.
Yeah, that sounds really cool.
So I might wear that. I don't know if I'd do like a full cosplay because I don't have like the gray undershirt for it or anything like that, but I might just wear the jacket and just with regular clothes underneath. Keep the Tom badge on.
People will know what it is, for sure.
Yeah. Everyone knows what it is. It would be cool to, I don't know, I'm sure Amanda knows people who could, like, if we try and get, like, a panel or something, get on a panel.
I think it'd be cool to do a panel, you know, at that point we'll be almost through TNG, I believe, so I think it'll be an interesting time for us in the podcast,
we'll be in, like,
too.
Season 6 or 7 at that point, yeah.
Well, so thanks for joining us today. I'm Ari.
And I'm GayFesh.
And until next time,
live long and prosper.
Thanks for watching.
Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notified when new episodes come out.
We're on Twitter at RestBothWorlds.
Join our Patreon at patreon.com/restofbothworlds for bonus content and hear your name at the end of each episode.